Chairman of the Cannabis Movement and a member of the Cannabis Commission, Andre Decaires, is not happy with the pace of cannabis reform on St. Lucia. Another iteration of the Cannabis Commission was recently launched to look at the viability of a commercially regulated industry for recreational use, medical research, and other purposes, including religious. Decaires and other advocates want a full-throated attempt at legalization and warn of strident protests if the current administration equivocates.
What is disturbing for us is that the CARICOM had a commission and their report suggested full legalization. This government hired the Pemandu Malaysian consultants and that report recommended full legalization. The Cannabis Movement handed in their white paper and that recommended full legalization. We've had two commissions and I know the commission is going to recommend full legalization. We have support from the Police Welfare Association as well as support from the opposition. We've seen many other islands put a bill forward in one way or another.
While other jurisdictions grapple with setting up a regulated regime for cannabis consumption, a frustrated Decaires worries that a dithering St. Lucia will be left behind as jurisdictions fine-tune their laws and public policies. He argues that the march towards a legal regulatory framework can start with decriminalization. Pro-ganja groups want cannabis consumption treated as a public health issue and not a criminal justice matter.
Decriminalizing means, one, you put a moratorium on incarceration so nobody goes to jail for herb anymore. Two, you put a moratorium on eradication so you're not destroying hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of agricultural produce. Three, you allow people who are in Borderlay, who are languishing there for only ganja crimes, an amnesty, let them out. Four, you have to let the police know exactly how much herb somebody could carry around on their person. You cannot leave that up to the discretion of the police, because you have some police, right now there's non-enforcement going on. So a lot of the fears that we had of public smoking is raising its ugly head. So you have to tell people to let people realize that public smoking is not acceptable. The police have to know that.
Decaires asserts that decriminalization can pave the way for the more tedious public policy and legal reform of a commercially regulated environment.
As to the regulations and the rules that need to come forward, that's where the time comes in, the time-consuming element of legalization. Because we really want to make sure that we protect the vulnerable, but make it easy for investors to come in. I mean, we're not going to allow them to take advantage of us. But the investors are in limbo. They're just confused as to why they're being treated this way. So there's no synergy. I don't know what's happening with our government, but it's not in a good place right now.
The Cannabis Movement frontman says despite the public relations blitz, the turnout at town halls for public dialogue has been abysmal. He welcomes dissenting voices such as faith-based groups and anti-drug campaigners in finding consensus.
Many of the churches and the religious community are against a reform of cannabis laws, yet they remain silent to bring their concerns forward and make recommendations. So we want to encourage people who have a negative, a negative impression of what legalization is, to first of all find out what we're proposing, and then when you find out what we propose, then make recommendations and criticisms so that we could come up with regulations and a legislation that would favor the majority of the country.
The latest advisory committee tasked with overseeing the long march to cannabis law reform is laying the groundwork for a draft policy framework for cabinet approval. A report is scheduled to be submitted by the end of December 2019. Although prohibited at the federal level in the United States, there were more than 211,000 full-time jobs in the legal American cannabis industry in 2018 in states where marijuana is not prohibited. The U.S. added 64,389 full-time legal cannabis jobs in 2018. Winston Springer Jr., HTS News Force.